Welcome back. It is 7/26 of 2015. We have a few concluding comments for the remainder of chapter 5 of the book of James. We know from the introductory material that James was very much concerned about the problem of assimilation by the Judaic Christians in the Greek cities. They were becoming assimilated in the Greek culture, and by becoming assimilated in the Greek culture, they were compromising their Christian identity with those who were involved in idol worship and pagan worship. And James was concerned about this, and his letter is very much about maintaining Christian identity in the midst of a culture that threatens to assimilate those who need to be distinct. And so it's very similar to the teachings that we've already discussed. It's very similar to the teachings about giving up attachment. Give up attachment to the secular culture. Give up attachment to the sensate realm, the surface realm of the flesh, the surface realm of sarx. Give up that attachment to finitude. Give up that attachment to that which will not endure, that which is corrupt, and that which will pass away. Very similar to teachings that show up in Buddhism, but we have found that you certainly don't have to turn to Buddhism to find these truths. James taught these truths back in AD 50 when he was trying to prevent the Judaic converts to Christianity from becoming assimilated, becoming attached, very strongly attached to the secular culture of the Greek cities that were very much rooted in deep pagan idolatry. And he wanted them to remain distinct and distinctly Christian. So he very much did teach against attachment. We found that he did teach against attachment, and he did teach that to remain and to retain your Christian identity, you should be involved in deep meditation on the Torah, deep meditation on your heritage, and deep meditation on the identity of the Lordship of Jesus Christ. And that through that meditation and concentrating on that identity, you can reclaim your distinct character as representing Christ and his freedom, which is the freedom that you should strive toward. So it is a very similar approach in a lot of ways to some of the teachings of Eastern Buddhism, because James very much is against attachment to the secular world and attachment to the Greek culture and attachment and compromise in taking up the culture within which they're supposed to become and remain distinctly Christian in their identity. So he does address attachment, meditation, and freedom, but it's very much about still standing up for your distinct identity as Christians who have come to learn of the God who desires to be known through the revelation in Christ. And he wants them to, we've already mentioned in the previous lessons, he wants them to become realigned with the knowing that they already possess. It's not that they don't possess this knowing, but they've lost their alignment. They need realignment to recenter themselves on that which they already know. They already know the truth. They've already apprehended the truth and made a decision toward that truth. And he wants them to become realigned and to recenter themselves on that identity. But with James, we already know from chapter 2 that faith without works is dead, and faith without works is dead is still prevalent in chapter 5. And so he talks about very practical ways in which you put faith into practice. And the most apparent way to put faith into practice is through meditation, which meditation is a little more labor intensive than the prayers that we practice in the West. Meditation is a little bit more time consuming than prayers we practice in the West, and it's a little more intercessory than the prayers we practice in the West. So it's very much, for us who are not used to it, it's going to be work. It's going to be a works. It is not a works that reaches salvation. Salvation is through Christ, but it's a works that exemplifies and does work out your faith. And so it is that Greek concept of Threskeia that we mentioned in chapter 1, and James is re-emphasizing in chapter 5 the Threskeia, the practical side of prayer, which is meditation, and the practical side of intercession and praise. And praise is worked out through the repetition of psalms, which is something we do not do in Western culture. We do not practice the repetition of psalms as Christians. We don't practice that in any way whatsoever. But we need to learn from James that there is a working out of faith on the practical side of Threskeia, and that Threskeia of praise is the repetition of psalms. And so meditation becomes the Threskeia version of prayer, and the working out of psalms, the repetition of psalms, becomes the Threskeia working out of praise. They become a fulfillment of faith without works is dead, but applied to prayer and applied to praise. So it is very much you overcome attachment through taking up meditation. You overcome attachment through taking up praise through the repetition of psalms. And then you do reclaim that alignment to lordship, and the alignment to lordship is an alignment to the revelation of the God who desires to be known, and that revelation was through Jesus Christ. And that visibility of the God who desires to be known is that which needs to be reaffirmed and realigned. And that's the whole purpose of chapter 5. James is trying to reiterate, realign yourselves with that alignment that you're losing through attachment. You're losing alignment through the sin of attachment. Through the sin of thesorizo, you're losing the proper alignment of your Christ-like identity. Take up works. Take up works is which is really faith, but it's the other side of faith. It's faith pistis, but it's faith pistis as the verb pistuo. For James, it's still faith, but it's pistuo as a verb and not pistis as a noun. So take up faith as pistuo action, as pistuo verb. And that means let your prayer be meditation. Let your praise be the repetition of psalms. Make your faith pistis, make it a verb pistuo. And so it's not that we don't see the challenges that are faced by these individuals in the Greek cities. James is pointing out that you've fallen into a sin of attachment. You've fallen into a sin of assimilation. You've fallen into a sin of thesorizo. And because I am James, I want you to take up pistuo, faith as verb. And if you take up pistuo, faith as verb, you will take up Threskeia. Threskeia, the practical side of worship. And the practical side is going to take prayer and transform it into meditation. It's going to take praise and it's going to transform it into the repetition of psalms. So keep that in mind. That's just a few conclusive comments, and that will wrap up our study on the book of James.